and chair of our licensing committee. Dr. Mindy Neal, board member and education standards and enforcement committee member. Patrick Fortner, our executive director. Christopher Burnett, our general counsel. Joseph McLaughlin, director of enforcement. Dr. Jeanette Kerbin, our chiropractic director, the first such staffer in the nation. Welcome. Jennifer Herbsenberg, our director of operations and administrator of CE.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sarah Matthews, director of licensing.
Good morning.
Lisa Agarwal, office manager. Chris B, investigator.
Sorry, good morning, a little late.
Chris Walling, investigator. And Jared Nuss, are you here? Licensing assistant. New member of the staff. And last but certainly not least, actually the most important, Nikel Williams, our IT and organizer of this meeting.
Good morning, everyone.
I won't attempt to introduce all of our guest stakeholders, but rather ask you to briefly identify yourself and who you represent when you want to speak during this meeting. On this Google Meet platform, you're all currently spectators, and when you want to speak, and I encourage you to do so, please just click on the thing to raise your hand and I'll see it eventually and I'll call on you. I'll change your status from spectator to participant, and then you will accept. Then when you're finished, I'll switch you back to spectator. If you need to share your screen, then we can make that happen as well. If your presentation is more than time allows, then you may wish to submit it to the board after this meeting. We'll consider all input before proposing a rule. So with that, now's the time for me to ask Christopher to turn on his microphone and to lead the way on addressing our 5 questions for this meeting, starting with eligible CE topics. Christopher, would you like to go ahead and take the floor?
I will do my best. I may be echoing here a little bit.
Just a second, because we're getting a serious echo from you.
Yeah, and you're using these mics, so you don't have to. So you're okay.
How's that?
That's great.
Okay, perfect. So what I wanted to touch on here was kind of preparatory for everybody, is that the board's authority for continuing education, it comes from Occupations Code Chapter 201.356, which anybody can read, and I think we provided that. It's part of the materials earlier before the meeting. The bottom line on that is the board has pretty broad authority to make rules to develop what it thinks is necessary for continuing education. So within the constraints of scope of practice, I think the board can pretty much do what it wants to in regards to statutory authority. The way it will exercise and has exercised that statutory authority to develop continuing education programs or standards is through rulemaking, and that's all the board's rules relating to rulemaking are in 22 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 73. The most pertinent ones for this meeting, I believe, is going to be 73.3, but those are the rules. Changing those, if the board so desires, at the conclusion of these meetings, plural, then it will go through the normal rulemaking process in which Proposed changes will be posted, voted on in a meeting, then posted with the Texas Register, and then after 30 days of comment, the board can then adopt the rules. There's a little one thing I do want to make everybody aware of is that changing anything substantive in the rules that would require any kind of fiscal impact on licensees or to the agency or things like that probably will draw the attention of the governor's office. So any changes are going to have to be very well justified. So just wanted everybody to be aware of that. And Dr. Bronson, that's really all I had to say today.
Okay. Thank you, Christopher. You will no doubt continue to participate in the meeting, as will
Yes.
Dr. Wofford, Dr. Kerbin, and I'm just trying to see, did Dr. Abraham make it to the meeting, and Dr. Neal?
I'm not seeing them.
No,
on here.
okay. All right, so once again, folks, I'm going to read the first topic of the meeting again, or I'm going to read it and as it's listed, and then we're just going to hopefully have a meeting just as if we're sitting around a table in a room together. That's the way we want this. And so feel free to comment, and then if someone wants to comment on the comment that was just made, you feel free to do that too. I think this meeting is being recorded, am I correct? And I think it's also being live streamed on YouTube video so that others can watch that are not registered for the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So just in that context, please feel free to participate, and we hope that you will. If you don't, then it's going to be a short meeting, but we'll see how it goes. The first question that we want to address is what should be eligible topics for continuing education credit? What subjects and areas of knowledge will qualify as approved CE? And we'll reference Texas Administrative Code, our board rules, 73.3J. And you'll need to bear with me as I navigate through these documents. Let's see here. And to do that, that is going to be in Google Documents for me. Here we go.
Dr. Bronson, are you still there?
Do you have a phone number for him?
Yeah.
If you just write it down, because they can hear you.
I can't hear you, Dr. Bronson.
Let me double check. I got another one for him too. The joys of technical difficulties. One thing I'd like everybody who's participating to be mindful of, or actually a request, if you do have any additional comments above and beyond saying what a great meeting this is, and wish to forward those, please just send those via email, and you can have attachments, that's fine. And just email those to me directly at Christopher, CHRISTOPHER, at tbce.texas.gov. So Nikhil is attempting to get Dr. Bronson back here.
Meeting right now.
There he is.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Okay, so that was Nikhil making sure I was back in the meeting. Okay, so you can see me and hear me again, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I didn't intentionally click to leave the meeting. I'm just trying to navigate through the documents that I was referring to. Let's get back on task. The first question is eligible CE topics. What subjects and areas of knowledge will qualify as approved CE? And sorry, Christopher, I know you were speaking and you were making apparently reference to our rule. Can you repeat what you said?
Oh, all I was saying, Dr. Bronson, was that if somebody wanted to make comments, additional comments after the meeting, to just email those to me.
Okay.
Dr. Bronson, before we jump in, I did a little background research. As you all know, our current requirements are 16 hours a year. Compared to other states, that puts us, frankly, towards the bottom of the number of annual requirements. The highest requirement is Kansas. They require 42 hours a year, and New Hampshire requires 10. There are several states like us that require 16, including New Mexico, Oklahoma, and us. There are on the entire list, Texas would be tied for 26th of the number of required hours. The national average is 18.37 and change a year. So that's the statistical background I wanted to provide, and I think we should base our discussions with that in mind. I know that some discussions have geared that the number of hours we require is too low, and others have said, oh, the number of we require is too high. I'm not going to make the argument either way, but I would refer you back to the data.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. I saw that you submitted, and I appreciate you collecting that data. Very helpful. Just to put everything in perspective, that actually is the second question on our list of 5 topics, is how many hours are necessary. And so let's just kind of keep that in mind when we talk about what should be required continuing education. Let me just kind of free flow here. in my thoughts that I've gathered until I see a hand raised or one of you wants to speak. But we've to give you all a background. When I came on the board in 2016, the approved CE was pretty straight and restricted to what is in scope for chiropractors to treat, to examine and to treat. And so it was really pretty straight, musculoskeletal, including nutrition, hygiene, the science behind it all, and absolutely nothing about what other healthcare professionals might do for our patients. We started looking at, well, what do chiropractors need to know about differential diagnosis in order to know what is a referral, what is an appropriate referral for a patient? Do you co-manage a patient with another person in the healthcare field? Do you refer it out, or do you call 911? Clearly, those topics include healthcare conditions that are not within scope for a chiropractor to treat, but to react upon. And so then we started including courses that described recognition, differential diagnosis, and the like for that purpose. We understand that some licensees took it wrong and looked at information that was presented in approved CE courses and then went back to their offices, started using it in their practice, and used the argument that, hey, this was approved by the board, this course was approved by the board, the instructor taught it, and therefore I can do it. That became problematic. And so then we talked about requiring a disclaimer for every instructor in an approved course to put it in perspective for the doctors in attendance. And that's still a viable option, and it's something that should be done in every approved CE course. There are some of the input that we've received, by the way, argues that CE should, approved CE should only include that which is within scope. Now, when we say within scope, we have to clarify. Are we talking about within scope for treatment or within scope for recognition as a portal of entry healthcare provider and with a duty to refer to an appropriate healthcare professional? Some argue that we should take it a step further and include education that other healthcare providers do, including surgeons. Say you attend a course and a neurosurgeon is lecturing on what they do when you, after you, say you order an MRI, you see a spinal cord tumor, and you match it up with that patient's presenting signs and symptoms, you make the referral, and you kind of want to know what's going to happen to your patient and interact with your patient, how to advise them on what they might expect that's coming up. Not that you're going to try to perform neurosurgery in your office, but that you have a clear understanding of what's going to happen to your patient, see it done, and then when they return to your office for chiropractic care, what's their condition change? So that's obvious. Other courses, however, that may be on the fence, they may be in a gray area of what's within scope for chiropractors.
You just let them know.
I can certainly see how the presentation could be taken the wrong way. It could be presented the wrong way.
He can't. No. He just.
How do we know?
I don't think he's looking at it.
As Dr. Wofford and I have talked about where does the role of the board come in auditing courses to see firsthand?
And Dr. Bronson, just a reminder, you've got 3 people with their hands raised.
Let me see. Oh, thank you for that. So I was looking at the little hand and I saw nothing on it. So I assumed there were no raised hands. Let me see what I can find now. Thank you. Okay, I see that. So now who was first? Is the top one first?
Yes, correct.
Yes. So Dr. Powers is a viewer, and Dr. Powers, I'm going to let you participate with this click. And I'm going to lower your hand. You, I believe, need to accept. There you are.
I did.
Hi,
Good morning.
thanks for being here.
How you doing?
I'm doing
All
well.
right. My name is Paul Powers, chiropractor in Connecticut. Graduated in 1987. I feel like I'm one of the old guys in the profession now. Can't believe that happened, but boy, the years slipped by. I've been involved with continuing education since 1988. Started taking postgraduate neurology programs and rose within the then American Academy of Chiropractic Neurology, and worked with Ted Carrick for a number of years. Lectured all over, and about 23 years ago, I worked with the University of Bridgeport College of Chiropractic to start the chirocritic.com platform, which I've been actively involved with. I've appeared before over 23 chiropractic boards pertaining to continuing ed over the years, and I've authored an article on chiropractors' opinion of continuing education that was published in the Index Medicus. So that's my short version of my bio, with, as some say, to qualify some of my opinions. The one question I have for you, Dr. Bronson, before I start to make a couple actual comments is, can I just have the 5 questions? I know there's eligible CE, the how many hours. What's the other 3, please?
Yes, besides the eligible CE and required hours, how many? Number 3 is format preferences. Should CE courses be primarily live, online, or a hybrid?
Okay.
And then number 4 is the jurisprudence hours. Are the current jurisprudence requirements effective? Should they be restructured? And then the last item is practice management definition. How should practice management be defined within the context of continuing education?
Do you want me to just whip down the 5 and make comments on all of them, or would you prefer me to limit it to the one we're talking about and then unmute later?
Can you stay around for the whole meeting?
I can.
I would rather you comment on the first 2 that
Okay.
we're dealing with now.
Okay. Eligible CE topics. What an interesting subject. I've been dealing with chiropractic boards around the country for 25 plus years, and I've had so many frustrating moments with some of them and so many really eloquent conversations with others. And it's a really odd subject to touch on, because your gut says scope of practice, But as Dr. Bronson referred to, there's a lot more to it than that. You look at a state like New York, they won't even approve a course that has sports medicine in the title, which is absolutely silly because chiropractic has plenty of people in the sports medicine arena, but they don't like the word medicine. So it comes to a difficulty of really settling in on a definition that really has to have some flux to it. The core of saying it's around our standard of care or our scope of practice rather, really, defines it as well as you can. But you want to be able to extend into those areas that the board deems is applicable. The problem is, how do you define it? I mean, there's so much gray area circling that center scope sphere that I don't even know if you could put it in words. And you might have to just make it as simple as saying, at the board's discretion, where these areas that are outside the primary scope just have to be analyzed by you when the application comes in. If I attended an event in Harvard on how to do a hip replacement, and I think it's a little outside the scope. But if I'm dealing with a multidisciplinary event up there where the curriculum or the syllabus has to deal with, from the diagnosis to the surgical treatment to the post-surgical treatment, it certainly would fit within the chiropractic scope. So my comment really is as simple as saying that beyond that center scope area, I don't think you can make it any more defined as putting it within the board's discretion beyond that. And then, if you get the applications and there's not enough info, then they have to provide more detail. And that'll give you the opportunity to really sit down and say, do we think this is a good program for CE? As for hours, Dr. Fortner, put all the hours in there. There's not a ton for me to comment on in that. 16 is not a bad number. It's a very reasonable number. I think that when you look across the sphere on medical doctors, and don't quote me on this because I haven't looked at it in a few years, but I think they are right around 24 hours. Mr. Fortner, sorry about that. You really look like a good friend of mine who's a doctor, so I'm going to be confused all the time when I try to talk there, but I'll do my best. I think the MDs are around 24 hours. Remember, and I don't know how many of you have ever looked into this, but there's something called the Physician's Recognition Award that the medical doctors can get. And that's such an interesting one. It might be going a slight bit astray of the center topic here, but it's just interesting to keep in the back of your mind. The PRA program was designed for medical doctors who went above and beyond lifelong learning. And they took more hours than they ever needed to for their state or national requirements. And when they got to that eligibility, they actually got a recognition award. It's pretty prestigious to obtain it. I don't know if the board or our profession could ever look at something like that, but it really is a great thing to just keep in the back of your mind as things start to develop in our profession. So that's all I could say about the first two. I mean, the scope is pretty clear. Give yourself discretion and your hours. I mean, I think that, realistically, 16 is a reasonable number. If you wanted to go up or down, 3 or 4, it's not a terrible thing. But I think that's probably it. Now, do you want me to comment on the required hours right now, or is that a later one?
That's later. That would be under the topic of jurisprudence. Well, you know what, Dr. Powers? Yeah, the required hours.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Let's restrict this to kind of what's this in scope and out of scope issue, and then loop back around to that. Okay.
Absolutely. That closes my comments at this point, and I'll loop back in when number 3 comes up.
Yes, and now I know better where to look for raised hands. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is Dr. I'm looking to see how to put Dr. Powers back on as a spectator, or
I'll take care of
is
that.
he?
If you want to just leave me, because I'm going to make more comments, I'll just mute myself.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do that for this. Let's go to Dr. Montgomery, and Dr. Montgomery, you are now a participant. And let's see where you are. Dr. Larry Montgomery, are you on the call? Okay. I don't see you. I guess somehow you dropped out. Maybe you had the same trouble I had earlier. Let's go to Dr. Scott Kelly, and I'm going to let you participate. Dr. Kelly, good to see you. You'll need to accept and turn on your microphone and your camera, I think. There you are.
Perfect. Greetings, everybody.
Welcome.
So, my name is Dr. Scott Kelly, practice in San Antonio, Texas. I also represent the Chiropractic Society of Texas. We're one of the 2 state associations here in Texas as their president. So I'll be speaking on behalf of myself and my state association. On the eligibility of CE and regarding to topics that relate to chiropractic, Dr. Bronson, you and I have spoke on this meetings past, and your concerns is our concern as well in regards to somebody attends a CE course, they have learned something that may not be in the scope of practice, and then they go back and refer to the procedure, not to the physician or to the practitioner that can provide said procedure. That is our concern, as it was your concern you mentioned as well. Sorry, I had some background noise going on. I hope that wasn't coming through. So that would be our biggest concern as far as for allowing topics that are not in scope to be allowed for CE. And with that, I can see the benefit of continued education in topics that are not necessarily what we can do. But on that note, I don't see what's stopping people from attending those courses on their own behalf. I know I do a bit extra. Last year, I got 120 hours of CE. The year before that, I got 88. And I don't submit all those to you guys because I don't want to bog it down, but I go above and beyond and do and learn more. I don't see what's stopping people from doing that. We just don't think that you should be getting CE for chiropractors in Texas for those topics that are not in scope, because as I said, what came up a number of board meetings now is stem cells. You have chiropractors that have integrated practices, multiple physicians in there. Patient comes in, sees the chiropractor, says, hey, you seem like you're a good candidate for stem cells. That's inappropriate. You and I both know that's inappropriate. It should be referred to the physician. So as far as differential diagnosis and what are the steps necessary, I think that we hit on in school enough what is a chiropractic issue and what is not a chiropractic issue, and we refer as necessary and co-manage those cases. So we don't see why it's necessary, where the benefit could be from somebody attaining CE hours that are out of scope, when our focus should be on what we do on a daily basis and refer when necessary. So again, I just want to mirror or express our concerns in that realm.
Thank you for that. Can I ask you a question now?
Of course.
Please comment on presentations that are out of scope, that are given for the purpose of informing the chiropractor on what might be done for their patient by another provider. Do you think there's a way that can be presented so that it enhances public safety and makes for more efficient healthcare in the referral process? In other words, I don't see that it's a benefit to put blinders on a chiropractor and and not to require them to understand what is contemporary in healthcare. In other words, but rather the chiropractor serves as a participant
So I think that's going to blur the lines between, yes, we're a portal of entry, but we're not primary care. The role of the primary care provider is to be the quarterback of said patient, right? And I think it's our job to recognize when it's not a chiropractic issue, but as far as that goes, the referral would be to the correct provider or physician that's going to deliver the services that's needed. For example, somebody comes in with a hip pain, you take x-rays and they have osteonecrosis. Well, as a chiropractor, I'm not going to be doing anything with necrotic tissue. I'm going to be referring that to an orthopedic surgeon. So that just one example of something that could come in that we could very well see, because I've seen it, or compression fracture at L5 that's metastatic cancer. I've seen that in office too. And again, that's not my job. I'm going to send it to an oncologist. So I'm not really seeing where the necessary is for, okay, you're going to go here. This is going to be the procedure they're going to do. This is how it's going to go. I say that's not our job. In my opinion, chiropractors, we're a specialty. We are trained very specifically for something that no other profession can do. That is our distinct and defining features. And I don't think it's our realm or our job to step in to be that primary care physician, but to be the specialist that we are. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. And I now see Dr. Montgomery and is back. So I'm going to, well, let's see, Dr. Montgomery. I want to recognize, I want to allow you to speak. And I think maybe you're already on. If you are, go ahead and talk to us. Nope.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, I've been here the whole time. I've listened to y'all. In respect to everyone else that has spoken, I won't tell you my past and where I've been and all of those things, but I have provided care for 37 years to patients. I'm now teaching anatomy and physiology at a university. And number one, we are portal of entry healthcare providers, and we do direct care. As a result of that, we're responsible to recognize things not only within our scope, but outside our scope, not to treat, but in an effort to get them to the proper place. So I disagree with Dr. Kelly and his premise. And we are the quarterback when we are accepting people off the street. We're only one of 4 professions in Texas that can do that, which is a doctor of physical therapy, a medical doctor, DO, and us. So we do have that responsibility. Now, if you want to go and practice under someone that is qualified and acts as a doctor should act, then that's your choice. And if you want to minimize your scope to only treat wrists and elbows or whatever the choice is, you have that privilege, but you're responsible to recognize any healthcare condition that comes in that needs to be referred to another provider. So we should be able to take courses that educate us, and I'll just tell you, anatomy and physiology in the last 40 years has changed from when I took it. So there are new things that are discovered. There are new things that need to be recognized by those of us that have been out of college for 45 years. And we need to be kept up to date. So in regards to our continuing education hours, I'm also a licensed realtor. A person that is 18 years old and has lived in Texas for 6 months can be a licensed realtor. And the CE hours for them is 18 hours. Now, yes, it's a big investment, but is that life and death? So I think our hours need to be increased to at least 20 hours. And also, just to get ahead of the game, if it is a course which involves tactile sense, acupuncture, adjusting techniques, anything that involves something that has what we refer to as a field that should be in person. You should not be able to take those courses online or in a seminar. And I know we're kind of jumping ahead, but I'll just.
Right, we're ahead of that. We're not on that topic yet, but I hope that you can stick around, Dr. Montgomery, and comment on that when we get there. Thank you. Anything else, Dr. Montgomery, on?
No, I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jeff Jenkins, the Executive Director of TCA, had his hand raised, and I'm now letting you participate, sir. Unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm on this meeting just to kind of hear the dialogue. I'm going to come back with comments from my leadership. I don't want to talk inappropriately or say something that might not reflect what TCA would think. I will say one thing though. I think what Dr. Montgomery mentioned earlier, I would agree with what he said. I think our people would probably object to raising the number of hours. I know doing a seminar, it's hard as is to get 16 hours in a weekend seminar, and that may add cost and expense to our doctors in terms of, the number of hours and make it a little onerous for them. But I just wanted to let you know that we will have some more formal comments on these 5 areas we talked about. But we do appreciate you all allowing the discussion and including us. So I just wanted to say that, not just sit silently. So that's really all I have to say. Okay. And I will say the number of doctors doing integrated practices. We at our seminar, we had our chiropractic, we had a session where we had a dentist on a panel with a chiropractor on tongue-tied, tethered something. And I do think including other healthcare specialties shows the collaboration between chiropractic and a lot of chiropractors providing a broadband of services to their members and wanting them to be the best healthcare provider they can be. So we would hate to limit that. Anyway, I'll be silent. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Appreciate you all.
I appreciate you as well, Mr. Jenkins, and I hope that you'll raise your hand again. I'm going to lower your hand. It looks like you maybe have already done it, but I hope you'll chime in again when we start talking about format, such as in person and versus online and pre-recorded and that type of thing, because you are a major stakeholder on that topic. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 hands raised, and I don't want to go out of order. Did Dr. Nancy or Dr. Ty, which one's first?
Dr. Nancy.
Okay, Dr. Nancy, I thought so. And now I'm going to let you participate. And you may need to unmute your microphone and show your video if you want to.
I don't know if I can show my video, but I don't think I can do the video, but I will tell you that being an ex-president of this board and like Larry Montgomery, I also have been teaching the last 15 years and nursing and pathophysiology and at the medical school as well. We have to keep different continuing education, such as in the nursing. We have to keep up, 8 hours plus our hours of chiropractic. And by the way, Mr. Jeffrey, they're free. You can get them on any of the programs, and they are absolutely free. But we have to keep them up. So I really think that we need to expand to the other board certified programs, if it's medical board or licensing boards for nurse practitioners or for nursing, we should be able to do that. Uh, we're going to a different world, and we have to be prepared. I mean, I've been licensed, I think my license is 2000 something, so I beat Larry. And we're not growing, and we're not giving our students the ability to grow. So I really think that we need to do something different here.
Okay.
Board. And to go speak to the person who said, you know, we're just chiropractors. No, we're not. I've been teaching those nurses, and it's pretty darn ridiculous that they can go do things that I can't, and I know a hell of a lot more than they do. We couldn't even give COVID shots. Really? We're taught, and our education is so different, and we have new things coming in that you all may not know about. But we need to keep open minds here and expand.
Thank you, Dr. Nancy. Please stick around for the rest of the meeting if you can. Did you have anything else before I move to the next person?
No.
Okay, thank you so much for your input. Dr. Ty Talcott, I'm going to allow you to participate. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello to everybody that knows me and that I know, and everybody I don't know. A lot of people on this line I've worked with for a long time. I'll be very brief. As most of you already know, I teach for 48 state associations and 5 colleges across the country. And I realize this discussion has been mainly on scope of practice-related clinical type CE hours. But I just want to make sure and put in a word for the fact that as a board, of course, you're responsible in protecting the public. And right next to protecting the public relative to something that could be harmful to them in the treatment world, the next biggest protection critical for patients is protecting their private information, their identity information, cybersecurity, et cetera, which falls under, of course, HIPAA and government compliance, which are the areas that I teach. And I just want to encourage and make sure that those areas continue to be allowed for CE credits. There are 2 states in the union that only do clinical credits and will not accept other areas. So I just kind of want to get that on the board, just that thought process. Also, as far as the hours, I hear complaints, and I also hear people say we should have more. I hear it all over the country. The only suggestion I have on that to the board is if you do decide to raise the number of hours, that you do so in very small increments. It's kind of like if you raise adjustment price a couple bucks, nobody really complains. If you raise it $150 a visit, all of a sudden you've got all kinds of problems. So just from that standpoint, if you want to reduce friction, but bring people into a little bit more educational requirement, I would look at that 2 or 4 hour. I teach courses for Paul Powers, who was on earlier, online, and I do them live. And the only other comment that I've got is that when COVID stopped almost all live things, and it was just online, as soon as it became live again, people were telling me live, thank God I can get with someone else in the world. And I noticed in doing webinars and online, people would wander away to do other things. They don't pay attention at the same level. They don't learn, and they don't take action at the same level. So I know that's a little later in the day, but I have to jump off, and that's all I got to say unless you got a question.
Not for me. Anybody else? I hope you'll stick around, and if you have further input on the format later in this conversation, please raise your hand again, Dr. Talcott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, who was next? I have Kathy Jones. You are participating, Dr. Jones.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm not a doctor, but I've been with you guys for 40 years. Um, I do want to make a comment about the out of scope on our webinars and on seminars. That's fine. The education's wonderful, but please put a disclaimer on it. You wouldn't believe how many times Michelle and I hear, well, I took a class that taught that, and we have to tell them, sorry, it's out of scope. You know, talking about the animal chiropractic. That's just one thing. Hours, don't lower them, but if you want to add a couple, you're going to get complaints from the doctor, but it probably wouldn't hurt. That's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. You always go by Kathy Jones, and I just haven't known if you're doctor or Ms. or what, but nevertheless, we appreciate you immensely.
Crazy cat. That's all I am. Thank you, Doc. Bye.
And I've lost track on who was first or not. I have Dr. Schmidt at the top. Nikhil, did you have any advice for me on how to tell who came first?
Michelle Quattlebaum.
Okay. Michelle Quattlebaum, you are participating. Once you unmute yourself, and if you want to show your pretty face, then do that as well.
Well, I'm not sure that's it looks that pretty. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's okay. Anyway, well, I didn't realize Kathy had her hand up. Hey, Kathy, she's over in the hill country. But I kind of have the same comment. I look at this from a different perspective, as y'all have heard me talk about for years. I represent so many of the doctors in front of the board for disciplinary, and one of the more common complaints lately in the last few years has been out of scope advertising, out of scope practice. And I have to be the bad guy to say it's out of scope. And they go, but I took the course. I'm like, it's still out of scope. And they said, but I have 100 hours in that. It's out of scope. And so in one regard, y'all approve these courses, which I believe in education. I believe the more the better. But I'm a proponent of what Kathy already mentioned is a disclaimer that it's not that they need to understand that by putting autism and this and the treatment of things that are outside your scope on your website and on Facebook, it will draw a disciplinary complaint. And that's all I've asked for the last few years is that could y'all require some of these subjects to have, it's good to have the education. I agree with you, Dr. Bronson. There's never too much. And, but it would help if the people teaching these would explain that this is out of scope. We've had this problem for a long time with the course in animal chiropractic, that they just need to explain how to advertise and how to actually practice it. And I think to obtain permission to get TBCE credit hours, that should be a requirement, is that whoever gives it has to put the disclaimer on their, it takes 5 minutes of their 4-hour presentation, so it wouldn't be long. Anyway, and as far as number goes, again, Kath, if you increase it over 16, you're going to get a lot of bitching and moaning. However, an extra 2 hours really wouldn't be a problem. When you have, I just thought about this with Ty making a presentation. Ty is, he teaches a HIPAA. It is a mandatory federal requirement that every single one of you take HIPAA and also teach your staff. So that could add extra hours that people are not personally doing. There's an 8-hour now requirement to take continuing ed if you get an acupuncture permit. So there is another 8 hours that eats into the 16. So 18 hours is not excessive, and it is average. It is not high, it is average. So those are my comments for now. And but thank you all very much. I know you've heard me say that before.
Thank you, Michelle. And so what I would add and ask you and Ty, because you're recommending that we require HIPAA training, to submit something to us to show. Okay, Patrick's putting up
I saw that.
18.43 is the average number of hours in the nation, correct, Patrick?
Yes.
So what I was going to say was, if we were to add a requirement for HIPAA training, then we need to know several things like data on how big is the problem now in Texas for chiropractors in their compliance with the federal regulations for HIPAA, and what might be the forecast, and then because we're going to have to support the necessity for adding that in.
I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know if I was confusing. I don't believe that you need to have a requirement for HIPAA, because not only does the federal government, I mean, with regard HHS and all require, it is every one of you are already required to teach and to take HIPAA. But not only that, but House Bill 300 years ago, now the state of Texas also passed a bill that every one of you are required to teach your staff, and that includes you, every other year in HIPAA, and within 60 days of a new hire. So I think that it would be, the board doesn't need a requirement about HIPAA. It's a state law already, and it's a federal law.
Well, yes, and as you know, we try to put all state laws that affect Texas chiropractors in front of our licensees, and we have all of those listed on the website, and perhaps all of that should be mentioned to the extent necessary in the required board hours for guidance.
Yes, and so I agree. That should be part of whoever's teaching the 4 board hours needs to remind people. I try to do that. I think Ty and I are doing a seminar. Everybody's welcome. We're going to school in Spain this summer, so y'all are welcome to take your CE with us this summer too. A plug.
Right. I noticed the plug. Very slick, Michelle. I hope you'll stick around and comment when we get to format. By the way, Dr. Mindy Neal is now in the meeting, and I don't know how long you've been here, but I see you now and appreciate your attendance. And we introduced you earlier, Dr. Neal, and acknowledged your position on the board and as member of the committees of enforcement and education standards. Thank you. I'm going to go to Mary Frost, who is as a viewer, and you're now a participant.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me?
I can, and I can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my name's Dr. Mary Frost, and I am the Senior Director for Continuing Education at Palmer College. And I was really interested in this meeting because CE rules have changed so much across the United States. And I thought I wasn't going to say anything, I was just going to sit and listen. But a couple of things might be useful to you. And if they're not, that's okay. I noticed that you guys were talking about the scope of practice and how to, do you do that with all CE hours within the scope, or can you learn about other things? And I thought of the language that Iowa law has, and they frame it this way, that the CE should be concerning clinical case management of the chiropractic patient, which I think encompasses a lot, because you also will have comorbidities, of course, if you have a chiropractic patient. So they can learn about it, and it is including co-management. And then when I look at Florida law, they really point out specific categories, and they go through them. So the board, the Texas board is is very proactive in doing this because I'm seeing a lot of laws are changing and rules are changing. And you guys also talked about the number of hours. Well, in 2018, the Iowa legislature said there were too many hours that chiropractors had to do because they had to do 60 hours every 2 years, so 30 hours a year, and they shaved off 20 of those. And that was independent of the chiropractic board. That was the Iowa legislature. So people, and here's why they did it. The medical doctors were actually having less continuing education in Iowa than chiropractors were. So those things come to mind when I'm thinking about this. And I think you guys are really reflective and trying to do the best thing. And I'm really interested in this topic. And then the other thing you guys were talking about was online versus live. And what I learned in the live classes that we have is that the doctors like the hands-on, they like the chiropractic subjects, and they're less inclined to do the live type classes, the chiropractic type classes. They don't want to do those so much online as they do the regulatory classes. The regulatory classes, they like to be able to go back and reflect and look at again. So if people are doing regulatory, mandatory classes online, having some kind of a printout or reference for doctors to make sure that they're doing the right thing is probably going to be useful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Frost. I have a favor to ask of you. If you haven't already, I would like to see your idea on like an outline on what you think is necessary in chiropractic continuing education. And if you can list that out and put in as much detail as you want, then we want to consider that. As far as the number of hours goes, I think that first we need to consider what needs to be in the list of required courses, and then think, well, how long is it going to take to get the point over? And then tally it up, and there's our number of hours. I don't think that we're going to we should have a goal on how many hours.
Right.
This is the same process that we went through with the acupuncture rule. What does it take? So anyway, thank you, Dr. Frost. I appreciate you. I'm going to go to, by the way, did any board members or agency staff want to weigh in at this time before I go to the next participant? Okay, I'm going to go to Dr. Alan Bonebrake, and you are a participant, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you and see you.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope I don't break your view screens. I want to thank you, Dr. Bronson. You've been a tremendous leader, and you're a tremendous doctor in person before that. I've known you for several decades. And everyone on the board, I'm familiar with each of you. I know, met you and interacted with you. Now, I've been teaching TBCE approved seminars for about 9 years now, and I'm also PACE approved, in like 36 states. I've taught in other states that don't need any of those. So I've taught in well over 40 states, and I make sure in the Texas seminars to go over the laws, including the HIPAA rules and all that. And we go through all the rules, in the four required hours, and I take people through, different things in how to apply coding and all that sort of things, with things that they don't know. I don't really touch on things that anybody would know. And I think, the HIPAA stuff, the things that, I touch on that, basically, I show them the contracts they need and all that sort of thing, and how they have to protect their records. And Yeah, they need to know that. I don't think it takes a super amount of time to do that. But you know, we do cover it because I want to make sure everybody knows that. And as for the rest of the parts of the seminars, I sell films in my seminars, and it's been my experience that people buy the film, and for the hand-on stuff, they say, yeah, I want to take the hands-on stuff because I want to make sure I have the touch right. Okay. And, you know, from that perspective, it's my impression that for somebody where touch is a principal part of a technique, probably those should be required to be in person, because you have to know the touch. You know, how can you learn how to adjust somebody, you know, just watching a video properly? You got to learn the touch of it. When you're doing certain aspects of acupuncture, you know, unless you're familiar with that, or acupressure, different reflex techniques, you know, you need to learn the touch. So I would be in favor of having given several hundred hours, or several hundred seminars rather, for those that require touch to be in person, because I don't think you can really learn it otherwise. Now, I also teach biochemistry and nutrition course didactically. Yeah, that's, you know, that's fine online. I don't see a problem with that, because it's primarily didactic. And I agree with Dr. Talcott. Yeah, people can just leave, and you know, at any time during any seminar, and you know, you don't know whether they're there or not unless you have them on a view and require them to be on a view during the whole thing, and have someone monitor that. Maybe that's a way to do that, to require them to be monitored. But that's kind of the input that I would have. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I don't have anything to add. I certainly appreciate everything that you shared with us. I don't have any questions. Do any other participants have questions for Dr. Bonebreak?
Would you all agree with what I just said? Is there any disagreement with any point? I'd be open to it. All right. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Dr. Bonebreak, just in respect, I'm abstaining from answering that question. I'm just gathering all input.
Sure. Well,
Okay.
well, I mean, I'm okay with anybody being against any portion of what I said. You know, it's up for discussion, and this after all is you know, open for discussion so that people can see different viewpoints. And I'm open to discussion. You know, if anybody says, well, I don't agree with this part, I'm okay with discussing that.
Okay. Yes. So in that light, and before you exit, do you are you aware of any common dissensions from what you're recommending, and how would you address that?
Well, the thing that I've noticed is since you know, the COVID thing, and this is just an observation. I teach all over the United States. I don't just teach in Texas. A lot of people are doing just online courses, and it's my perception, because they just want to avoid charges for motel and eating out, and you know, the trip cost and all that sort of thing. And I get that, but you know, certain courses, you just got to learn the touch. We're chiropractors, we touch people, and you have to learn that part. And I don't see where you can learn it entirely, you know, from a distance. You got to get the feel. And I'm sure anybody who teaches that sort of course would agree with that. You can't just learn it by watching it. You got to get the feel for it.
Okay. So, and we haven't even moved on to that part of the discussion yet, but to summarize what you're saying, if you don't mind me doing so, is that in chiropractic continuing education, we should never be entirely online, is what you're saying. Is some portion of it has to be done in person.
For those that require a certain touch or feel, yes. For those
Okay.
that are only didactic, yeah, you can probably get that online, and I don't really have a problem with that. And Dr. Talcott certainly has a point. People can just, shut their picture off and wander off for a while and come back occasionally and check in. And, there's always going to be a problem with that. Matter of fact, I know docs who have done that.
Hey, I have comments when we come up to this topic, and so I hope that you can stick around. It is 11:15, and I think we should press on with the meeting. I'm okay. If anybody needs to leave, you can certainly do that if you want to, and please come back to the meeting and listen in and raise your hand when you want to talk. I have I see Dr. Powers' hand raised. There was another hand raised just a second ago, and I was getting that one. I don't know who it is. JF Cairo.
It was John Fulkerson. You can go ahead and accept him now. He's back on.
Okay. I'm going to, well, now it just dropped off, Nikhil.
I'll let him
Or did
participate.
you?
Dr. Fulkerson, if you can, go ahead and activate your mic and your camera.
We see you.
All right, very well. My name is Dr. John Fulkerson. I'm a chiropractor up in the rural area of Toyah, Texas, up in the Panhandle. Been here for about 18 years. I just don't really, I guess, for or against much of this. I just maybe just want to put my 2 cents worth in and just maybe a different perspective on some of these things. I'm not opposed to out-of-scope information just for the information. I like the idea of a disclaimer. Whether we allow it for CE hour purposes or not, indifferent on that, I guess. I think a good doc will always seek out information that he's after to better take care of his own patients without necessarily what's in it for me per se and such. As far as the number of hours, I'm not opposed to a small increase. I say small because, certainly 16 hours in a weekend is 2 full days is pretty hefty as it is in terms of, like everybody else is stating, the travel and the cost thereof and such. I wouldn't mind a small increase if the flexibility of the format was still allowed. And I guess maybe the only other little tidbit I'd like to maybe add into it all is just from the standpoint of maybe sunset rules. And I say that from the direction, first of all, I'm not very much in the political realm. I'm not all that much into a lot of this. It's kind of like tipping my toe into the business here. But as far as, the distinctness that chiropractic is and what, gave us the ability to do that. And I guess my concerns if we start doing, as one of the other speakers earlier said, about injections or anything like that, COVID shots or such, I would think that may just allow us more into susceptibility of sunset rule being involved, absolved into another board and such, and not being able to keep our own there. So just the 2 cents worth on that, but appreciate your time. Let me speak.
Thank you. Dr. Jeff, was it?
It's Dr. John.
John, okay. Thank you for being here and participating. I'm going to go to Dr. Nancy.
To answer some of the questions that I just heard, number one is, please tell me, after all these years that I've been practicing chiropractic, and I started in 1980, that I find these license renewal classes that are practice management induced, that are together, disgusting. We are not learning anything new. We're not adding anything to our knowledge that we can do and protect our patients with information. I know that there's certain rules that we have to do. We've always had to do them, but when they sit there and they tell you how, with this, you can learn this, and now you can make this, and And if you add more of this and more of that, I'm going, oh God. I sit there, I'm an academic and I find it just belittling.
Right, well-
And by the way, for the Palmer woman, she said that the medical doctors have a decrease in licensure, but beware, maybe most of you don't understand that the Texas doctors and every doctor in the United States has to go back and take a board again every 10 years in their specialty that allows them to keep them up with all the new things that are going on. So maybe that's a difference that none of us may have been aware of.
Thank you. That's a great point. And here shortly, we are going to get more into the topic of practice management. And so if you stick around, you might decide you have further comment.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, I'm going to go to Mike Robertson and let you participate. Please introduce yourself and share your concerns.
Well, hey, good morning. Mike Robertson. I run a CE company, Chiro 21. And on the scope of practice and what should be included in CE hours and things like that, I think that the comments from Dr. Powers and Michelle Quattlebaum and Kathy Jones, like between their two ideas of saying, hey, it's in scope of practice, or it might be outside of scope of practice, let's do an audit of the course to make sure that it's relevant, and then adding on to that those courses have some form of disclaimer as part of that curriculum. I think that's a pretty elegant solution to consider. So that's all I thought. I thought that was really intelligent of both of them to come up with that solution. So I just wanted to say that I 100% agree with that. That seems sensical. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you. I'll share giving them credit for that comment. While they didn't invent that concept, I totally agree. It's valid and necessary. I've attended, certain seminars like the rest of us that have not gone through the process of getting Texas board credit, and we go to it just because we're interested. And so some of the courses that I've attended with multidisciplinary participants, I see those disclaimers. The physical therapy board, the nursing board, those are listed right in the syllabus. And there's certainly no reason that I can see why we couldn't require the same thing in word for word language. That, of course, we would discuss with our legal counsel. But anyway, so I appreciate y'all's comments and support on that topic. I don't see hands raised. Board members in attendance or agency staff, please comment if you want to, while I look toward the next topic. The next topic is, let's talk about the format preference, live, online, hybrid, and let's just stick with that topic for a minute. Our current board rule defines online as either pre-recorded or live webinar. And then another rule which differentiates the two does so to limit the number of online hours that are not live to 10 hours. Just to lay that on the table, and I'll open up discussion. I'm going to let Dr. Powers comment first, and then Michelle Quattlebaum.
And I'm back. Hello, sir. Thank you. This will have to be my last comment. I'm going to have to just squash a couple things together briefly because unfortunately my time's running short. I'm on the East Coast over here, so I'm a little ahead of you guys. In regard to format, I heard a lot of comments where people went beyond the scope of those first couple questions and started talking about formats. And one of the things people said, a couple of them, was how, online you can wander away, you can do this and you can do that. All right, let's talk turkey here. All right, live seminars are no better. You can't force a person to learn, okay? I have taught seminars all over the country and internationally. And I'll never forget the time that I was very interactive. I carry a pointer and I put the dot on Dr. Bronson's chest and go, everyone look down. If you got a red dot, you got to answer this next question. And one guy went like this to me and said, look, I know the rules. I need to sit in the room, but there's nothing in the rules that I have to learn. All right. I've been to seminars where people set up in the back and put chairs up and had portable TVs because they didn't want to miss their football game. All right. So if you're talking about skirting the system, people are always going to. The most important thing is to create an environment for learning and let people take it from there. These are adults, these aren't children, okay? Number two, when I started in online learning 20 some odd years ago, we were like one of the first in the field. I went and appeared before a lot of boards about this. And what's interesting is 23 years ago, when I ventured out of Connecticut and attended my first board meeting, and I can't remember where it was, I apologize, the medical doctors at that point, 23 years ago, could already take all of their hours through online learning. They didn't even really have webinars back then. It was really just static online learning. And it wasn't even videos. It was reading papers back then because you couldn't even stream on dial-up. So the medical doctors can get all the credits online for all these years. It's never been an issue. The PRA that I brought up earlier, Physician's Recognition Award, you can obtain all the hours to get a PRA, which is rather prestigious, via that as well. So, you know, in terms of the area of format, you have to let learners choose and give them the choice of what they want. Forcing someone to go to a live program when they want to learn online at their own pace and time, it is actually contrary to learning. And forcing someone to take hours online that want to go live is also contrary. So the door swings both ways on this. And please make no mistake about that. There was comments about adjusting techniques. You know, listen, I've seen a couple of states over the years require adjusting technique as a required hour and then pull it. You know, most chiropractors learn a technique and stick with it most of their career. We saw that in a study we did years ago. All right. And it was an informal. It was more of a survey than a study. I apologize for using the incorrect word. But people that want to go out and learn and take adjusting courses will go out and learn and take adjusting courses. Can you tell me honestly that I can't learn? I'm a really good diversified practitioner and I can't learn SOT taking an online program with detailed videos and close-ups? I find that hard to believe. But if you want to go to an adjusting course and want to go live, go do it. But the contrarian of being able to say, we're going to require a certain number of hours live, then you got to require a certain number of hours online, and that's ludicrous. Let people have the choice of what they want. You know, the AMA has done some studies that have been published in research journal articles, and they actually showed that attendees of virtual learning actually had an increased ability or increased tendency to apply what they've learned than people to go to live programs. Don't ask me why, but that was the conclusion of the AMA study at one point. Additionally, you know, COVID gave us a great opportunity, and there wasn't a lot of live learning, if any. And the one thing we learned during that time frame, and the thing we learned before that when people were doing online learning for years in many states that had no restrictions, is that there was no increase. There's no study or even report that showed that there was an increase in board action against a licensee or a malpractice action against a licensee for people who took online versus going to live. So you just, the best thing to do is allow people to choose what they want. There are people that took courses during COVID that wrote in the survey forms, I can't wait till COVID's over because I hate online learning. Go to live learning. That person, that's their choice. That's what they should do. The Oregon Board of Chiropractic 15, 18 years ago put out a white paper, and in it they said adult learners will seek out the topics of interest that are most important to them. Now, Required hours, I want to make a comment on that real briefly, just because I am going to have to leave, and I apologize in advance, and I'll be brief. You know, in Connecticut, and I was on the board here for 6 years. I don't know if y'all remember, but there was a terrible lawsuit in Connecticut where this group was hammering chiropractors with billboards and stuff on buses saying that chiropractors cause strokes to everybody. And I was actually the acting chairman of that entire fiasco of a hearing. It was quite unbelievable. But in my role as a board member there, our board actually we're on a 2-year cycle, by the way, not a 1 year. And every 2 years, the board would have the latitude to, if they even wanted to, tell people what the required hours were for that next cycle. And I think that was great. The Department of Health came up with that, not me. I take no credit. But it gave us the ability to look at the complaints that came in that year and say, you know, boundary's an issue this year, or billing's an issue this year, or whatever it is, based on what the board experienced. So I think that that's a great system. I'm not saying everyone agrees with me, but if the board had the latitude to flex on that, you know, we had an issue a few, you know, Connecticut's the capital of, Lyme, Connecticut's the capital of Lyme disease. And you know, what they call Lyme disease is the great mimicker. So the boards decided there was so much public health issues a few years ago on Lyme disease that they said the next cycle, you got to do an hour and, you know, differentiation of Lyme disease. So I think that's really great. Last thing I'll comment on is your jurisprudence requirements of the current, basically 2 doc, 1 ethics, and 1 risk management. Look, it's great. I think it's overkill to do it every year, the same thing over and over. That's why I think that the Connecticut board's flux of picking topics or saying, you know, do board rules every other year or something like that is a little more applicable, because what you're doing is you're forcing people to kind of look at stuff again and again and again, over and over and over, year after year, kind of in the same area, rather than let them using those hours to broadly pick things that may be of more interest for diagnostic or therapeutic value to them. The last comment in that area that I would make is that, you know, I hear people, it's 16 hours, it's not that much, you could take 400 if you want. Okay, there are people in our profession that are amazing like that, but the vast majority in Texas take 16 hours. So you want them to broadly be able to take stuff in the areas that they most enjoy. I think that is everything I had. And before I leave, if anyone has any questions of me, I'm more than happy to give you some feedback. Always available by email. I also want to shout out, I don't even know if she's still here or not, but I got to tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I deal with a lot of board people around the country. I'm talking about the staff. And I just got to tell you that Jennifer Herzenberg is one of the top 1% in the country. Responsive, absolutely one of the nicest people to deal with. You know, keeps you inside. You've got to stay in your lane with Jennifer. But if you work within that, she really is just incredible. And I hope that everybody at that board knows what a gem they have in dealing with her.
Thank you. And we all agree that Jennifer is a gem, and we are truly blessed that she is on our staff doing what she does. I'm going to go with, I'm going to recognize Quattlebaum, Robertson, and then Cochran in that order. Here we go.
So I just want to bid adieu to everyone. Thank you. I wish I could stay a little longer, but I am pressed up against another meeting I got to attend. So thank you very much for your time and putting up with a few of my comments.
You've been very helpful. If you have anything else that you want us to know that you forgot to mention, please just send it on over.
Will do. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Michelle?
Okay. I do agree with Dr. Powers about Jennifer. Great comment and very true. She is wonderful. Okay, but I think the subject we were talking about with this one is the formats. And you know, Kathy and I teach them in all the formats. We have an online presentation, but we do webinars every single month. And I teach live, whether with TCA or TCC, and none of them are perfect. There's going to be disinterest. There's going to be, because I personally take 20 continuing ed hours of my own for my law degree and my board certification. But I can sit in a live seminar and dream up all kinds of things and not listen. But I think that I like the mixture that y'all currently have. I'm not saying the numbers can't be juggled a little, but I like the fact that you have online and live. And live includes webinars. And there are certain subjects, and of course, the main thing that we teach other, we teach Medicare and all, but our retirement stuff. We are doing with the board hours. I disagree with Dr. Powers, his comment, and I got a text when he said that came out of his mouth from Kathy saying, "Are you going to respond to this?" And I'm like, absolutely. The board hours aren't over and over. The risk management, the board rules, we change ours every month, and it needs to be, because that's why certain subjects should not go on a recording. I teach differently than some, I'm a little odd, but I teach what comes in on my desk too. We talk about the board hours, we talk about the board rules, but you need to talk about what happened this month. And that's how we teach the board rules, is everything changes. It's not an over and over. That's why it can't go, I think, online. It needs to be live. It doesn't need to be in person, but webinars are live. And for the concern, like Jeff Jenkins had mentioned, some people can't afford, sometimes business is slow and you can't afford hotels and travel. Texas is a big state, and to come to Houston or Dallas to take your CE gets to be expensive. But so that's why webinars or live, that option is good, or taking it online. But I like the way y'all currently have it. I don't think it needs to have a hand grenade thrown in it. A mixture, and that gives the doctors the choice. Although I do think that some of the, and when we get to the required hours, I have some more comments, obviously, but the way it can be taught is so much more beneficial to the doctors when they can interact, they can ask questions, they can get clarification on rules, they can understand what in a real world, what you do and you don't do. So, but anyway, so the thing that I'm trying to comment on is that I like the way y'all currently do it. And I think that it gives your licensees the choice to fit it in with their practice. I do notice, and I'm sure the TCA as well as the colleges can confirm, when you go to convention now, the older doctors are the ones that are there. They're the ones who crave the interaction, the networking, and seeing their friends that they haven't seen in 10 years or this, but they get to see those. And the younger generation are online, and they're more used to this type of Zooming and things. So I think that's the other thing. It's the personality of the doctors. It's the type of practices they have. And so y'all give them the choice to be what's beneficial for their practice. And so anyway, that's my comment on that. But I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Robertson, you're up. Hey again. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, it helps when you turn on your microphone, right?
There you go.
Thank you, man. The format question, a lot of the points by Dr. Powers and Ms. Quattlebaum, I agree with. Like, you're going to have people who don't pay attention, regardless of how you do it. Like, that's their choice. And I don't think that forcing everybody to behave according to like a rate limiting factor like that is realistic. I got my certification in adult education. I thought that was a responsible step to take. And one of the primary tenets of that is that you can't force adults to learn, like Dr. Powers was saying. that's actually taught when you teach adults. The key to adult learning is twofold. Number one, above all else, interest in the topic. So the more availability of topics we have to the profession, the higher engagement we'll have from attendees within a course. The second one being if your intent is to actually teach a topic to somebody, the availability of the materials to them to go ahead and self-study. That's the second greatest way to teach an adult, is to just give them the information. If they have that interest, they will go ahead and pursue it. So I think that given those tenets, that the different formats, whether it's in person, whether it's live webinar, or whether it's online on demand content, they can all achieve that to a degree. And I think that as long as, like, the subject of adjusting, and that as a seminar, I think that as technology continues to evolve, as the production quality of live webinars improves and recorded webinars improves, that we all have the sense of touch as chiropractors. Like, I could watch you do a technique and I could pick that up pretty quick at this point, having practiced for a couple decades. That we'll get to a point where this will be an effective way to teach, and it will be relevant. I mean, we may not be there yet. We're still kind of developing technology on that end and quality, but I think allowing it to be taught that way, if we prohibit seminars from exploring that methodology and improving upon the quality of content, then we're never going to get there. The best way to improve just not only the quality of the content, but the delivery is just repetition and doing and feedback. And so allowing, like we do in Texas, where we allow the topics to be taught live online, then as live online educators, we can take the feedback from our attendees to continue to improve the quality of that. And there are always going to be, like, CE providers who don't do that, who just kind of roll through with what they're doing because it's worked. But then there will always be emerging educators and CE companies that will come up and say, hey, I think we can do this better, and continue to innovate. And so I think allowing that, the way we have it, where you can choose, you want to do it all in person, you want to do a webinar, but definitely having some aspect of it that has to be live, like Michelle was saying. We do the same thing. We update our content all the time on those board hours and board rules, because it needs to be updated all the time. It's an evolving topic. So that's kind of the summation on those two. And then, yeah, there's that cool rule. West Virginia, is it West Virginia? I've got my spreadsheet up here that's got that. Their CE mandatory hours change annually. So the board just says, hey, this year you need to do this. So if the Texas board wanted to, like, make a rule where, hey, yeah, we have these mandatory hours, but also as the board, we reserve the right to say, hey, y'all need to teach this year as just a one-off. I think having that as an option available to the board would facilitate kind of what you guys are seeing getting pushed out to all of the CE providers. So I think that communication between the board's expectations and the providers would be improved if something like that existed. Not that it would make my job easier, it'd make it harder, but I think that's not necessarily a bad idea or a bad thing. And then just for y'all's reference, there are, I think, 3 states that mandate adjusting as a curriculum content, and they all accept live webinars as a methodology for teaching that. So, well, not yet. California is doing it, but they switch in 2025 to accepting live webinars. So that law passed. Anyways, good time.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. I appreciate you. I attended your course a few years ago. You're very animated, and if anybody could keep the audience's attention, it would be you. And yet I looked back behind me and there were some guys sleeping. So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I'm going to go to Cochran and then Jones. And just so you'll know, we have 15 minutes left until noon, and we're not going to actually be timed out, but let's just let that be our goal. Dr. Cochran, you're up.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I can see you.
Listen, I appreciate the time this morning. I know you guys are very busy. I submitted a couple comments to the board recently regarding a lot of this, and I just wanted to put my comments in there that I think one of the things that would be helpful for the board to look at is, and I know the board does a lot already, but is allowing courses that are PACE approved, and for multiple reasons why, as part of the Federal Chiropractic Licensing Board, the information that's given out. Their mission is to protect the public, promote quality education, and it helps us as DCs to remain current with scientific literature and regarding a lot of rules and regulations. It's just one of my thoughts, and I wanted to chime in on that. And so I appreciate all of the hard work that the board is doing, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cochran. I did read the thing you submitted and about FCLB and PACE, and I fully understand. I fully understand that concept and your concern. So that will be part of our discussion as we move forward with the new rule.
Thank you, sir.
Kathy Jones, you are up next.
Hello.
Dr. Jones.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
But number one, Derek is awesome. And so is Christopher. They come on our webinars. The doctors love hearing from the board, and they can ask any question. We love it. As far as live versus online or webinars, I've been around 40 years. 40 years ago, we went to conventions only, and a lot of doctors went to the bars instead of the meeting room. So, it doesn't matter. This is America. We should all have a choice. And I feel the board should have a choice whether they want to go to a live meeting, whether they want to attend a webinar, which is live, or do the online. Our webinars online, yes, I agree with a lot of your speakers. They can walk away from their computers. We have questions. We get phone calls afterwards going, I heard you say, and I have a question. So we know they're listening. And on the online, I get comments from the doctors that take the 10 hours online going, he was wonderful. How can I contact him? I want more. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So I do have a question at this point to differentiate online pre-recorded versus online webinar based. With the webinar based, yes, a person could get up from their chair, go and have lunch, come back, and then click a button to say, yes, I was here. If it's online pre-recorded and that program requires the person to answer questions periodically through the program, it's more difficult to skip out. Does anybody have comments on that? And then I will go to Bone Break and then Quattlebaum. And then Robertson and Mole. Bone Break.
Okay, I have a couple of comments. I haven't run into any states, and Dr. Robertson said there are 3 states that require adjusting. Most of them don't, so I don't know that that's a forced thing in that many states. I have had people call and say, hey, do I have to participate? And I said, no, you just got to warm the seat. But, that's like 2 people out over 2,000 doctors that I taught, so I don't see that as a real big thing. Now, PACE not live seminars require the person to get all of the hours within 24 hours that's online, not live. And they have to stop every 15 minutes and answer 2 questions before they can go forward. So if you got a 16-hour seminar, that gets a little bit prohibitive that way, but I'm just telling you what PACE does on that. I have several doctors that, one state saw quite a few abuses. They had quite a few hours, so they were having doctors doing online, not live, taking more than one seminar at a time, at the same time. They had like 2 computers and they were taking them simultaneously. And some of them, you can fast forward. So they're taking like a 12-hour seminar in 2 hours because they're fast forwarding it. I'm telling you what some states have found, and I'm aware of it because I do this in several states and I review a lot of things. So that's some of the problems that some of the states have come into. So if you're considering doing that, I would say that other states have seen some problems with that because doctors, are doing it this way. All right. Also, when I give the required hours, I go through all the rules and I give actual things, and I ask docs, have you paid attention? Do you read the board newsletters to see what some doctors have done? And I have doctors been there for decades, and I say, okay, did you see the one where the doctor had his license disciplined because in Texas because he allowed somebody who didn't yet have his license but was within 12 months of graduating a CCE accredited school, which Texas allows, had gone over that 12 months, and then he had his license disciplined, and everybody goes, what? And I'm going, yeah, they pay attention to that. And did you see the one where doctor had laser hair removal within his office and he was disciplined? And then I go through, things that aren't allowed.
I'm gonna take your vital control.
Somebody is talking over me here. They're not quieted.
Yeah, just and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the same thing here in a moment. Dr. Bonebreak, we have less than 10 minutes, and I want to cover some topics. Patrick, I can't see that. If you move it back, I could read it. Or maybe you're trying to block the sunshine. I don't know.
I'm trying to block the sun. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So go ahead.
And anyway, I addressed the cosmetic thing, and I pointed out, hey, if the doc had done the laser hair removal at a different address and still owned it, it wouldn't have bothered him. But because it was in the office, it was problematic, and he had his license disciplined, and that happened in Texas and a lot. And the rules have been changing through, you've been upgrading the rules, and I appreciate that you've been doing it. But a lot of docs, somebody said, I don't know, that it's necessary to go through all of them. Well, I've had docs take repeatedly several of my seminars over several years, and they hear me say something that I've repeated several times, and they heard it for the first time, such as the board attorneys talking about, the massage therapists and the sexual things and having them sign something. I had a doc that I mentor didn't hear it, even though she'd heard it several times. She said, oh, I got to go home and do this. 2 weeks later, she had one of the massage therapists in her office, touch somebody in an inappropriate way. Now he's under indictment, but she got covered because she had done a background check and she had him sign that. Now, I personally think, in addition to that, and I understand the massage therapy thing, but I tell the doctors, I personally think you ought to have everybody in the office. You don't have somebody the ultrasound could touch somebody wrong, or pulling electrodes off of somebody could touch somebody wrong. And, I tell them, it's not required, but I think you should just, your front desk person can say something wrong sexual.
Okay, Dr. Bonebreak, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting a little off track of what I want to accomplish before the end of this hour. And so I'm getting ready to recognize Michelle Quattlebaum and Mike Robertson. I hope that we can touch on the topics of jurisprudence, but even more importantly, within the next 5 or 6 minutes, the topic of practice management. Here we go. Michelle, you're on.
Oh, just briefly, Dr. Bronson, you had to respond to something you said about talking about the non, like in a webinar, people could leave, go have lunch and all that. The program we use will not allow that. And I'm sure that I would assume that a lot of them have the same features that our program, our GoToWebinar program has. that if somebody is not attentive at the screen, there's a little triangle that comes on. And when you have someone like Kathy who chases them down, if they don't respond to her within a couple minutes, they're booted. They get no credit. And we ask a question. If they don't respond, and it's not, there's a printout y'all could ask for from us, and it shows if anybody is non-attendant and not attentive, and we knock them out of the program. We don't give them credit. So if they can't be gone, they might be able to walk to the kitchen or go to the bathroom, but that's about it. And
very helpful. Very helpful. I appreciate that you
I
do
mean,
that.
we have a written program. So anyway, thank you.
And I appreciate that technology is available.
Yes.
Mike Robertson, you're participating.
You'd think for someone who does this, I'd have a better hold on this concept. But yeah, you asked about the skipping out and walkway, same thing. We do the same as Michelle and Kathy. If somebody's inattentive, we just kick them. And that way our software will automatically track how long they're offline and if they're logged in. And if they're not there, they just don't get credit. I guess it's that simple. And then you'd also brought up that quizzing at a higher interval rate throughout, like as the on-demand courses do it about every 20 minutes or so. And I just want to let you know that the technology does exist on our platform to incorporate that. We don't do it currently because it's not a requirement, but it is something we could add. It's about like $3,000 a year to add it in. But there's definitely solutions for that if that's a direction that you guys feel like you need to explore. So there you go, man.
Okay, thank you for that. On the topic of practice management, what defines practice management? I know that Dr. Schmidt sent some information, and if he's on the call, he may want to comment. If Dr. Kelly, if your comment is on this topic, I appreciate it. If it's on a previous topic, then we're interested as well. So here you are. Dr. Kelly?
Yep.
There you are.
All right, wonderful. It's going to be on the topic that you just were sort of going in between topic 4, the mandatory hours jurisprudence. I would love to see Texas become that 4th state that has adjusting technique as part of mandatory hours. And so that's what some of the submissions that I sent over to you guys was regarding that. And the rationale behind it is there was a Gallup poll done by Palmer Davenport showing that as far as desired services from a chiropractor, 91% was chiropractic adjustments. So that's the primary service we provide, and I'd love to see it as for us to stay sharp with our adjusting technique. And if we could incorporate that, man, I think that'd be a wonderful advantage for Texas DCs. Then I will hold on the other comments because I said this is I don't want to keep us longer. I'll keep myself short-winded, if you will.
Well, I did actually read what you sent in about 30 minutes before this meeting. Even though it came in late, I was able to read it. So it's consistent with what you just shared. And of course, if you want to expand on it or have something further, please do the same thing. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mary Frost. Okay, you're in with us, Mary Frost.
Hi. Hey, I just wanted, in this practice management topic, Florida just went through this whole thing. The Florida board had to decide whether they're going to have practice management or not. And there was a really lively debate about this. And this is what they came up and have in their rule. Practice management and cost containment and practice management, they defined it as the development or mechanics of establishing and managing an office, including enhancement of patient care, insurance issues, and working with managed care programs. It does not include methods of increasing business profits, marketing of chiropractic services, investments, or financial management. So if you want more detailed information, just let me know, but I can snippet some of these and reference them and send them to you, Dr. Bronson.
I'm very interested in that, and I think that's where we are right now with practice management, is to clarify what the what the subject exactly is being taught. So thank you so much for being with us. We're at the top of the hour. It is noon, and no, I don't have any hands that are raised. So at this time, I would love for any of the agency staff or board members in attendance to have a chance to speak. Dr. Wofford wants to speak, and I think all you have to do is make sure your microphone's on, sir.
Yeah, it's on. I would just like to thank everybody for the comments. As being on chair of education, it's very informative to learn from different people that teach across the country and what other states are doing. I think this was very, very informative. It'll give us some information to go back and quite frankly, look at our rules and how we address this. So I would like to thank everybody.
Appreciate you. Anyone else?
Jennifer, go ahead and unmute your mic and turn your camera on.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to thank everybody for the comments that were said. I really appreciate all the wonderful things that were said, and it's a pleasure to get to do this job every day. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our pleasure is certainly enhanced by your presence and your leadership and involvement. Patrick, how about you?
I don't really have anything to add. I would like to let everybody know that I'm going to encourage that we have both a staff and a board discussion, perhaps on the jurisprudence issue, because in talking with our enforcement director and with Jennifer and with Sarah in licensing, I know that well, we've redone about 90% of the rules since I got the job going on 6 years ago. It'll be 6 years, March 1st. And because of that, I would hazard to guess that all of the people that are on this call right now are among the top 5–10% of the chiropractors who are really paying attention to everything we do. Not everybody's that conscientious. So I know that, if whether it's a course or, whatever we end up doing, some sort of more intensive review of jurisprudence, particularly as it relates to rules that have changed in the last few years, my gut tells me it's going to be extremely needed, just because of the phone calls that come in. Y'all may not know this, but I pick up calls every day. I've got my phone set where it rings in the queue, and I would say conservatively, 70% of those calls are in the rules, and it's either a question of people aren't reading the rules, or they want to be spoon-fed the rules, or they don't know how to look up the rules. I would suggest that some of the issues with compliance would go away if more people were more accepting of the need to stay up to date on these rules. And I'll just leave it at that.
Point well made, and hopefully well taken. And so how does that factor into this discussion? Well, because in our requirement, then we might consider, as we've discussed a bit, is requiring some involvement in reviewing and understanding the rules. And so as we look at problems and how to reduce these problem areas. As you just said, if everybody read and understood the rules, knew where to find the answer to their question in the rule, and then you wouldn't have all those phone calls, and we might have better compliance. So I know that as we move forward, this is going to be one of the topics in our consideration of the required hours. How would we present rules, and to what extent do we require it? I'm hoping that the board takes over rules, so that our instructors of the required hours are not burdened with trying to interpret rules. I would love to be able to present it ourselves, and so that everything's crystal clear. And with that, Christopher, do you have a final comment before we adjourn?
I was muted, sorry.
You got an echo here now.
There we go.
Oh no.
How's that?
That's better. Yeah, you're using Nikel's microphone, right?
Yes. No, I mean, I'm kind of with Patrick, at least in the extent that there's been a wholesale revision of the rules since 2018, and there are a lot of our licensees that are woefully ignorant of what's contained in the rules. I understand those who are going to be diligent about things are going to be the ones that are going to be diligent. They don't need any prompting. But to the extent that we can avoid complaints being filed against folks through more aggressive use of the jurisprudence exam or something related to it, maybe it's something worth looking at. But that's all. That's for you, the policymakers on the board to decide.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will very shortly adjourn, and remind you to pick up your party favors on the way out. With that, we are adjourned. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.